Running on, running on empty, running on, running blind, running into the sun, but I'm running behind. Oh, child, I know that problem intimately and literally. And today, we're gonna fix it for good. Hello, I'm Lisa Robbin Young, and this is Creative Freedom, your dose of empowerment for creative entrepreneurs, where can-do inspiration and how-to education collide to help you own your dreams without selling your soul. Many moons ago, one of the items on my bucket list was to run and finish the Bobby Crim 10-mile road race. It's a well-known foot race in my hometown, and as a kid, I helped out at the water station near my aunt's house about halfway through the course. She lived on the downhill side of the toughest part of the run, the Bradley Hills. Year after year, I was amazed by thousands of runners grabbing these little cups of water out of my hands, sometimes in tears as they splashed their faces and continued on their way to the finish line. Call me crazy, but I thought it would be cool to be on the other side of the Dixie Cup once in my life. Well, my results were less than stellar, but looking back, it taught me a lot of lessons about how to deal with overwhelm and how to keep going when things get tough. Overwhelm happens to the best of us. And while chaotics and fusion creatives tend to battle it a little more, when overwhelm strikes, it can stymie even the most organized linear. My own accountability club asked me to do an episode about dealing with overwhelm. So today, I'm sharing my 3 best tips for keeping your momentum even when you feel overwhelmed. Ready? Let the race begin! Imagine the start of the race. Everyone's all lined up, and then bang! The starter pistol fires. The race starts. There's a blue line painted on the streets of Flint that tell runners where the course is. As long as they follow that blue line, they'll eventually make it to the finish line. But what if there were no blue line? Well, even the fastest runners in the world wouldn't know if or when they'd hit the finish line. And they just keep running. How would you feel if you started running and never saw an end in sight? Tired? Defeated? Or, overwhelmed perhaps? That's why it's important to define success as clearly as possible before you set out on your journey. Know where your finish line is. And then take time to celebrate it when you get there. So tip number 1 is to know your finish line and then celebrate the heck out of it. Runners don't typically cross the finish line and then head across town to run another marathon. Instead, they take time to recharge, fuel up, and review their race notes for any lessons learned. It's easy, especially for fusions and linears, to keep moving the finish line. Okay, that's done. Check. What's next? Check. Got that done. Check. And they never take the time to breathe, to celebrate the win, and then move forward. So basically, in this tip, I'm telling you that in order to keep moving, sometimes you actually have to stop. Wild, I know. In the early stages of growth, it can feel important or even necessary to just keep going, as if you're some kind of Energizer bunny. But the reality is that you need to know where your finish line is so that you can give yourself time to recover, review, and regroup before your next race. Fusions and linears can take a cue from their chaotic counterparts by planning rest periods into their work schedule. Whether that's a short 10-minute break before tackling the next project, or a week-long hiatus after completing a big project launch, it's important to give yourself room to decompress and to debrief when a project is complete. Now, running the race was way different than I had imagined. Actually, I didn't know anything about training for an endurance run. I knew I needed to practice running. I knew I needed good shoes, But beyond that, I was pretty much clueless. My first mile was pretty good. I ran it in about 12 minutes. Not gonna qualify for any Olympic events with that time, but a 12-minute mile for an out-of-shape 26-year-old felt pretty darn good to me. But remember I told you that the Bradley Hills are about halfway through the race? Yeah, that was torture. Some people compare it to Heartbreak Hill in the Boston Marathon. It's the toughest part of the course. Up, 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 and it feels like forever before you're coming down the other side. I finally understood why so many people were crying by the time they got to that water station. That stuff burns. But I had to get through them if I was going to finish. So here I am, halfway through the race, and I still have about 4 miles to go. So there's no turning around. There's no cutting out and quitting. I have to keep going. I have to keep moving. But Confucius says it doesn't matter how slow you go so long as you keep moving. So this girl just kept picking up one foot and putting it down and picking up the other foot and putting it down and just keep walking. Just keep moving, whatever it took. So tip number 2 is to focus on just the next step. It's really easy to get overwhelmed when we look at the 10-mile slog that lays in front of us. Even if we break it down into smaller chunks, which is what conventional wisdom will tell you to do, we can still get overwhelmed at the smaller chunk. The Bradley Hills is a smaller chunk of the Krim. And it doesn't take a genius to tell you that the uphill side is harder than the downhill side, but you have to do the uphill side first. So, how do you get through that smaller chunk? One step at a time. Don't look at the people around you whipping past you like you're standing still. Just focus on your own feet. Move yourself and let everyone else worry about themselves while you keep doing what you know how to do. One teeny tiny itty-bitty step at a time, if that's what it takes. And if you don't know what step to take, well, then this next tip is for you. So here I am, finally past the Bradley Hills, into that swanky part of Flint, and this older woman catches up to me. Now, she looks like she knows what she's doing, and she offers to run together toward the finish line. Now, by this point, I'm just glad I am not the last person on the course. So I happily take her up on her offer, even though I don't exactly know what this running together thing actually means. Running as part of a team is a different kind of race. You define success differently than the solo runners on the course. It meant she slowed down for me sometimes, and I sped up for her at other times. We paced each other, and we kept each other encouraged and moving forward. Now, at one point on the course, I needed to pee desperately. And she kept recommending I just release my bladder and let it run down my leg like all the other runners do. I just couldn't. But about a mile from the finish, someone had set up an overhead sprinkler that was showering the runners. Now, I didn't want to hold her up anymore, so I told her, you go on without me. I'm going to stand here under the shower for a minute, do my business, and then rinse off while I'm standing here. Well, she waited for me. I added at least 2 minutes to her run time, but my bladder and I were so grateful for that extra time. I also felt that final wind kick in, so I was able to book it with her that last mile to the finish line. Now again, we did not finish at the top of the pack, but we finished, and we finished together. So tip number 3 is to ask for help and be willing to receive it. You can't stay on the hamster wheel of hustle all the time. But sometimes things need to keep moving, so you need to ask for help. When we ask for, or when someone comes along to offer help, it behooves us to at least consider that help instead of just brushing them off. And if we need that help, we need to be prepared to accept that help in the way that it shows up. We can't always be picky or demanding about it. My guess is that you've got a lot on your plate for which you could ask for help and either haven't yet or won't. Why? Well, sometimes it's a control issue. Chaotics want everything to measure up to their high standards. Linears can run people over with deadlines and bottom lines, choking everyone with their get it done no matter what attitude and hurting feelings along the way. Fusions just think that they can do everything faster and better if they just do it themselves. And a lot of times that's true, they actually can. But until you can let even one or two things go and put them on someone else's plate, even temporarily, you're stuck doing all the things. As your business grows, there are simply more and more things to do. Businesses get more complicated as they grow. So until you uncomplicate and streamline, either through automation, delegation, or deletion, that's not going to be a healthy way to live and work. In fact, I bet you find yourself always working and not living much. Just because it's important to the business doesn't mean it has to be done by you. And just because you're good at it doesn't mean you're the one that needs to be doing it. It takes a little bit of awareness. Realize that some things should not be delegated until you've got a handle on them. And it's easier to delegate things that have systems or processes attached to them so that someone can follow along and get it done according to your specifications. Now, chaotics, this is your chance. Make sure that they follow your exacting details. You're going to write it all down and then give it to someone to follow. If they can replicate your process, you're in business. Now, if you get halfway through your own process and want to start pulling your hair out, then maybe you should lower your expectations a little bit and cut people some slack. Or maybe not. I mean, it's your business and you get to define success on your own terms. Just realize that the more you ask of others, the more resources it will cost you. I've said this before. Time, energy, money, attention. These are precious commodities in life and in your creative work. Make sure that you're getting the best possible return on your investment for where you are in your business right now. Champagne wishes and Kool-Aid money don't make it easy to have the best of everything. You might have to compromise temporarily on some things while you grow your business revenues to afford your finer tastes. It's like Jackson Brown says.
Gotta do what you can just to keep your love alive. Trying not to confuse it with what you do to survive.
Getting out of overwhelm begins by first being aware that you're experiencing it, and then making a commitment to yourself to not keep putting yourself in that spot intentionally. Be clear about how much time you really have. Know your finish line. Say yes to less so that you have more breathing room in your calendar. Focus on just the next step to minimize distractions and ask for help and be willing to accept it when it shows up. If you need help getting help, my accountability club is a great place to start. We're a cozy bunch of creative entrepreneurs showing up for each other on the entrepreneurial journey. You can celebrate your wins, you can ask questions when you get stuck, and be seen and heard by a group of smart, savvy entrepreneurs who get you because they've been where you are and they see the possibilities of where you're headed. You can learn more about A Club at lisarobinyoung.com/A Club, and I will put a link in the description so you can click and go. As for the race, a little more than 2.5 hours after I started, I had followed that little blue line across town, up and down the Bradley Hills, all the way to the finish, one step at a time. Overall, I finished 6,172nd out of 6,196 runners. But I finished, dang it, I finished. So now it's to you. What are your best tips for managing overwhelm? Where do you need to look at delegating or deleting some tasks, even temporarily, to give yourself some breathing room? Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments, and be part of our rising tide. And if you haven't already, get access to a bunch of extra goodies like transcripts, worksheets, and more when you join our free member community, The Rising Tide. Also remember our live Facebook Q&A on my page this week. We're going to talk about getting out of overwhelm, and I'm going to be sharing a super simple relaxation technique that I use when things start to get hairy for me. So check the website for details. If you liked this episode, smooches, subscribe and share us around with your friends because sharing is caring after all. Next week, we're going to look at how to say no with class and authenticity so that you can stop working for free and break the cycle of overwhelm and under-earning. I hope I'll get to see you next time. And until then, for more inspiration and education to help you own your dreams without selling your soul, come see what's shaking over at LisaRobbinYoung.com. You know you want to.